The magical bridge to the Land of Pixies. In the heart of a valley nestled between jagged cliffs and darkened woods, the village of Solmer lay as if forgotten by time. Here, the whispers of old legends clung to the air like mist, and none were more persistent than the tale of the magical bridge. It was said to appear only under the rare light of a silver moon, an arc of light leading to an otherworldly realm. To some, it was a story to frighten children. To others, it was a promise of forbidden wonder. Maeve had grown up with her grandmother's stories of the bridge. "It's no place for mortals," her grandmother would warn, her voice low and secretive. "The pixies may seem playful, but their eyes see deeper than the soul, and their laughter holds truths you may not want to hear." Yet for Maeve, those warnings only deepened her curiosity. The thought of stepping beyond the familiar boundaries of her quiet village filled her with a longing she couldn't explain. The night of the silver moon came like a breath held too long. The villagers marked the rare event with closed shutters and hurried prayers, wary of its strange light. Maeve, however, stood in her small attic room, gazing at the sky. The moon was not the pale orb she had always known, but a glowing disk of molten silver. Its light spilled over the land, casting an ethereal sheen over the trees and meadows. Her heart pounded as she turned toward the forest. She had waited for this moment her entire life. With a lantern in hand, she slipped into the night, her feet carrying her down the winding path that led to the woods. The village lights behind her grew faint, swallowed by the dense shadows of the trees. The forest was alive with an unnatural stillness, a quiet that seemed to listen. Maeve moved carefully, the soft crunch of leaves underfoot the only sound. The further she went, the more the air seemed to hum, a faint vibration that tingled against her skin. Then, as she rounded a bend in the path, she saw it. The bridge. It rose from the forest floor as if it had grown there, an arc of shimmering silver and gold light. Its surface rippled like water, yet it held firm, suspended over a chasm of shadows that seemed to stretch into eternity. The air around it was thick with a strange energy, and faint whispers seemed to coil around her ears. Maeve hesitated at the edge, her breath catching. It was more beautiful and more terrifying than she had ever imagined. The bridge seemed alive, its light pulsing softly, as if beckoning her. She took a tentative step forward, her lantern flickering before its brilliance. As her foot touched the bridge, she felt a warmth seep into her bones, a strange comfort mixed with an unshakable sense of being watched. Step by step, she ventured further. The world around her began to fade, the trees dissolving into a sea of silver mist. The whispers grew louder, forming words she couldn't quite grasp, yet they resonated deep within her, like echoes of dreams she'd forgotten. Maeve glanced back, but the forest was gone. The village, her home, her life, they had all vanished into the mist. All that remained was the bridge and the vast emptiness it spanned. For a fleeting moment, doubt pierced her heart. What lay at the other end? Would she ever return? But curiosity was a fire too bright to be quenched. She moved onward, the bridge guiding her with its shimmering light. The mist thickened, and the air became lighter, sweeter, tinged with the faint scent of wildflowers. The whispers faded, replaced by a soft hum that seemed to come from the bridge itself. Then, with a final step, Maeve crossed into a new world. The mist dissolved, and Maeve stood at the edge of a vast meadow bathed in twilight. The grass glowed faintly beneath her feet, and flowers bloomed with impossible colours. Above her, the sky was an endless expanse of deep violet, dotted with stars that pulsed like tiny heartbeats. The air buzzed with the sound of laughter, light, musical, and distinctly not human. Maeve's breath caught in her throat. From the shadows of the glowing trees, tiny figures began to emerge. Their wings shimmered like fragments of broken glass caught in the sun, and their eyes sparkled with mischief. The pixies had found her. The whispers of the bridge lingered in her ears as the pixies approached, their smiles wide and their laughter bright. "A mortal!" one of them chimed, its voice high and melodic. "It has been so long since one crossed the bridge." Maeve said nothing, her voice caught in the wonder of the moment. Yet in the depths of her heart, a single thought surfaced, sharp and clear. The legends were true. And so, the night of the silver moon began to unravel its mysteries, drawing Maeve into a world that would forever alter the threads of her fate. The pixies circled Maeve in a blur of shimmering wings and chime-like laughter, their eyes alight with curiosity. They were no taller than her hand, but their presence filled the air with a peculiar energy, as if the very ground bent to their will. They darted closer, their translucent wings humming like dragonflies in the stillness, their voices weaving questions as fine as spider silk. "Who are you, mortal? Why have you crossed the bridge?" Maeve opened her mouth, but no words came. The beauty of this realm, the sudden intensity of their gaze, it stole her voice. One pixie, whose wings gleamed like molten silver, cocked its head and spoke again. "Ah, she is silent. Perhaps she seeks what all mortals seek, the unknowable." They laughed in unison, a sound like rain falling on crystal. One pixie, bolder than the others, floated close enough for Maeve to see the glow of its tiny eyes. "Come then, the queen must see this one." At the mention of a queen, Maeve felt a tremor of both fear and fascination. She didn't resist as the pixies swirled around her, creating a luminous path through the twilight meadow. The grass glowed faintly underfoot, and the air was thick with the scent of something sweet and wild. Though her mind was crowded with questions, she followed, drawn as much by their enchantment as by her own curiosity. The pixies led her deeper into the land, where the trees grew taller and their branches sparkled with threads of light. Rivers, impossibly clear, wove through the landscape, reflecting the twilight sky like molten glass. As they travelled, Maeve noticed the whispers she'd heard on the bridge had returned, faint and fleeting, as if the land itself spoke in hushed tones. "What is this place?" Maeve finally asked, her voice breaking the silence she'd held since crossing the bridge. The silver-winged pixie turned, its face mischievous. "This is the realm of the Everlight, where your kind seldom treads. Few mortals see it, and fewer still leave unchanged." Before Maeve could ask what that meant, the trees parted, revealing a palace unlike anything she could have imagined. It stood tall and delicate, as though woven from the strands of moonlight itself. Its spires reached into the twilight sky, their tips vanishing into the stars. The walls shimmered, alive with a faint glow that pulsed in time with the whispers Maeve had heard since crossing the bridge. The pixies hovered in front of the grand archway, their wings catching the light of the palace like fragments of a mirror. The silver-winged leader turned to Maeve. "Enter," it said, its voice softer now, almost reverent. "Queen Lyricel awaits." Maeve hesitated at the threshold, her heart a wild thing in her chest. The air here was heavier, thick with an energy that felt both inviting and forbidding. Gathering her courage, she stepped forward, her boots silent against the gleaming floor. The hall stretched endlessly, its walls adorned with strange patterns that seemed to shift and shimmer when she looked at them. At the far end, upon a throne carved from a single piece of translucent crystal, sat Lyricel, the queen of the pixies. Lyricel's presence was overwhelming. Her wings cascaded behind her like a waterfall of light, and her eyes, impossibly large and glowing, seemed to see through the layers of Maeve's soul. Her voice, when she spoke, was soft yet resonant, carrying the weight of countless ages. "You have crossed the bridge," Lyricel said, her words wrapping around Maeve like a silk thread. "Few mortals dare, and fewer still arrive with pure hearts. Tell me, child, what do you seek in the land of Everlight?" Maeve swallowed hard, her voice catching in her throat. I seek nothing but to understand. I wanted to see if the stories were true." The queen regarded her for a long moment, her expression unreadable. Then a faint smile curved her lips. "Many come seeking riches, power, or immortality, yet you ask only for truth. You are an unusual mortal." Lyricel rose from her throne, her movements fluid and deliberate. "But every crossing comes with a price. The bridge does not appear lightly, and its whispers are not without purpose. Tell me, Maeve, will you pay the price for the answers you seek?" Maeve's breath caught. "What is the price?" The queen's smile deepened, her eyes shimmering with an ancient knowing. "That, child, is for you to discover. But first, you must prove your intentions. If they are true, the bridge may yet return for you." Before Maeve could respond, the Queen gestured, and the pixies swirled around her once more, their laughter now a melody of challenge. The whispers grew louder, filling Maeve's ears as the world shifted around her. The twilight faded, the palace disappeared, and she found herself standing at the edge of a dark forest unlike any she had seen before. The silver-winged pixie hovered before her, its gaze sharp and watchful. "The Queen has set you a task," it said. "Find the heart of this forest and bring it back unscathed. Only then will you be worthy of the bridge's return." The forest loomed ahead, its shadows deep, and its trees humming with an energy that seemed almost alive. Maeve took a step forward, the weight of the Queen's words heavy on her shoulders. Behind her, the shimmering bridge was gone, leaving only silence in its wake. The forest that unfolded before Maeve was no ordinary woodland. Its trees stood impossibly tall, their trunks twisting upward like silent sentinels guarding forgotten secrets. Their bark shimmered faintly, as though woven with threads of moonlight, and their leaves whispered in a language that brushed against the edge of comprehension. Shadows moved where no light should cast them, and the air hung thick with the scent of earth and mystery. Maeve hesitated, her heart heavy with the enormity of the Queen's challenge. Find the heart of the forest. What could that mean? What form might it take? She glanced over her shoulder, but the shimmering palace and its watchful queen were gone. Only the silver-winged pixie remained, hovering just beyond the edge of the clearing, its expression unreadable. "Do not linger," it said, its voice softer now, almost a whisper. "This forest is alive, and it does not forgive hesitation." The pixie's words sent a shiver down Maeve's spine, but she nodded and stepped forward. The forest seemed to exhale around her, the air warming and vibrating faintly, as though it acknowledged her presence. Each step felt heavier than the last, her boots sinking into the moss-covered ground. The whispers in the air grew louder, shifting from faint murmurs to a melody of voices, neither welcoming nor hostile, but watchful. As Maeve ventured deeper, the light began to change. The twilight glow of the meadow faded, replaced by a dim luminescence that emanated from the trees themselves. It cast the forest in hues of green and gold, a haunting, otherworldly glow that seemed to pulse in rhythm with her heartbeat. Time felt stretched, as if each moment could span an eternity, yet it pressed forward relentlessly. The path soon grew tangled and uncertain, disappearing into the dense undergrowth. Maeve paused, scanning her surroundings for any sign, any clue. Then, from the corner of her eye, she caught a faint glimmer, a light flickering like a distant star. It darted between the trees, vanishing and reappearing as if leading her onward. Without hesitation, Maeve followed. The light guided her deeper into the forest, winding through ancient groves and over streams that sparkled like liquid starlight. Yet the further she went, the more the forest seemed to test her resolve. The ground shifted beneath her feet, turning to sand, then stone, then soft, sinking earth. The air grew heavy, filling her lungs with the weight of unspoken fears. Shadows began to move among the trees, taking on shapes that tugged at the edges of Maeve's memories. Faces she had known, places she had long forgotten. Her mother's laughter echoed faintly, then twisted into a cry of despair. A boy she'd once loved stood before her, his hand outstretched, his eyes filled with longing. Each vision felt real, tangible, as if the forest was pulling at the threads of her mind, unraveling her sense of self. "Stay true," whispered a voice, soft, almost imperceptible. It was not the pixie nor the queen, but something deeper, something ancient. Maeve clung to those words, grounding herself against the forest illusions. She pushed forward, ignoring the voices that called her name, the faces that begged her to turn back. Finally, the forest opened into a small glade bathed in a pale, otherworldly light. At its center stood a tree unlike any she had seen. Its trunk was silver, smooth and glimmering as though polished by the stars, and its branches stretched skyward, dripping with golden leaves that glowed softly in the dimness. Nestled at the base of the tree was a crystal, its surface faceted and alive with shifting colors. It pulsed faintly, in rhythm with the whispers of the forest, and Maeve knew without doubt that this was the heart she sought. She approached cautiously, the air around the crystal vibrating with a palpable energy. Kneeling, she extended her hand, but before her fingers could touch the surface, the ground beneath her trembled. The shadows at the edge of the glade surged forward, coalescing into a form that towered above her. It was a creature of darkness and light, its body shifting and unstable, its eyes burning like embers. "Why do you seek the heart of the forest, mortal?" it demanded, its voice resonating through her bones. Maeve swallowed her fear and stood tall. "I was sent to prove my intentions are true. I seek nothing but understanding." The creature studied her for a long moment, its form flickering like a dying flame. Then slowly it stepped aside. "Take it if your heart is unburdened. But beware, what you carry will reveal more than you wish to see." Maeve knelt once more, her hands steady as she lifted the crystal from its resting place. The moment she touched it, a wave of warmth and light surged through her, filling her with both wonder and unease. The crystal pulsed in her hands, its light dimming and brightening as if alive. The shadows in the glade retreated, and the creature disappeared without another word. Maeve turned back toward the forest, the crystal cradled in her arms. The path was clearer now. The illusions faded, but the whispers in the air seemed louder, sharper, as if the forest itself held its breath, watching her every step. She didn't know what awaited her at the palace, but one thing was certain. The Queen's test was far from over. Maeve emerged from the forest, the crystal pulsing softly in her hands. its light a living rhythm that seemed to match the beating of her heart. The whispers that had followed her through the trees now fell silent, replaced by an uncanny stillness. The meadow lay ahead, its glowing grasses swaying gently as if in anticipation, and beyond it, the palace of moonlight stood, its spires shimmering against the twilight sky. The silver-winged pixie reappeared, its eyes narrowing as it hovered near her. It glanced at the crystal, then back to Maeve as though weighing the essence of her soul. "You have found the heart," it said, its voice carrying a note of both surprise and wariness. "But the Queen will decide if you are worthy." Maeve nodded, her resolve firm despite the growing weight of the crystal in her hands. Each step toward the palace seemed heavier than the last, as though the ground beneath her resisted her advance. Yet she pressed on, guided by the faint, rhythmic glow of the crystal. The great doors of the palace opened as she approached, their light spilling outward like liquid gold. Inside, the hall was as she remembered, vast and echoing, the walls alive with shifting patterns of light. At the far end, Queen Lyricel waited, her wings folded elegantly behind her, her gaze as piercing as it had been before. The pixies flitted around Maeve as she entered, their whispers a soft chorus of curiosity and disbelief. She carried the crystal with care, its glow dimming slightly as she stepped forward and knelt before the Queen. Lyricel rose from her throne, her movements graceful and deliberate. "You have returned," she said, her voice a song that resonated through the hall. "And you bring with you the heart of the forest." Maeve looked up, meeting the Queen's gaze. "I bring it as you commanded, Your Majesty. I have sought nothing but to prove my intentions." The Queen descended the steps of her throne, her light casting shifting patterns across the floor. She stopped before Maeve, her expression inscrutable as she extended a hand toward the crystal. Maeve held it out, her fingers reluctant to release it. The crystal pulsed once, brightly, before Lyricel's touch transformed its glow into a cascade of colours. "The heart of the forest reveals more than its seeker's resolve," Lyricel said, holding the crystal aloft. "It unveils the truths they carry, the burdens they hide, and the choices that define them." The hall grew darker as the crystal's light expanded, casting Maeve's shadow in long, wavering lines. Images began to form within the crystal's depths, fragments of her life, memories she had both cherished and buried. She saw herself as a child, standing alone in the fields outside her village, longing for something she couldn't name. She saw her grandmother's face, lined with worry as she warned Maeve of the bridge. She saw her own reflection, older, her eyes filled with questions that had yet to find answers. Then, the images shifted. She saw herself standing before the bridge, the whispers beckoning her forward. She saw the moment she had stepped onto it, her heart filled with wonder but also fear. And finally, she saw the forest, the illusions it had shown her, the doubts it had sown, and her decision to press onward despite them. Lyricelle watched silently as the crystal revealed its truths. When the images faded, the Queen's expression softened, her gaze steady and knowing. You have passed through the trials of the forest and emerged unchanged in your intent, she said. Few mortals possess the courage to face their own truths, let alone to carry them without faltering. Maeve lowered her gaze, her heart heavy with both relief and uncertainty. "Does this mean I may return?" she asked. Lyricelle's wings unfurled, their light filling the hall once more. "The bridge will appear for you one final time," she said. "But the choice remains yours. You may return to your world, carrying with you the memory of what you have seen, or you may stay in the realm of Everlight, bound to its mysteries forever." Maeve's breath caught at the weight of the decision. The whispers of the bridge echoed faintly in her mind, a reminder of the path that had brought her here. To return would mean leaving behind the wonder and magic she had glimpsed, but to stay would mean surrendering the life she had always known. She looked up at Lyricelle, her voice steady despite the storm in her heart. "I will choose," she said. "But I need to know one thing. Why does the bridge appear? Why was I chosen?" The Queen smiled faintly, her eyes filled with the light of 1,000 stars. "The bridge appears not to summon those who seek adventure, but to call those whose hearts carry the weight of longing. You were chosen because your soul echoed its song, and the forest answered." Maeve's hands trembled as she rose to her feet, the crystal now resting in Lyricelle's grasp. She knew her choice would shape more than her fate. It would define the whispers of her own heart. The Queen's wings folded once more, and the pixies grew silent, waiting for her answer. The hall of moonlight fell into a stillness so profound that Maeve could hear the faint hum of the crystal in Lyricelle's hands, its glow pulsing like a distant heartbeat. The Queen's eyes lingered on her, a gaze that held not judgment but patience, as though she had seen this moment unfold countless times before. "The bridge will appear," Lyricelle said softly, her voice wrapping around Maeve like a silken thread. "Its light will cut through the veil, but its path is yours to choose. Step across, and you return to the world you know, carrying only the faint echo of this place in your heart. Remain here, and you may walk the paths of Everlight, but the bridge will vanish forever." The pixies whispered among themselves, their chime-like voices rising like the faint rustle of leaves in a breeze. They flitted around Maeve, their glowing wings leaving trails of light that faded like fleeting thoughts. Each laugh, each murmur seemed to ask the same silent question. What will she choose? Maeve stood motionless, her mind a storm of indecision. She had stepped onto the bridge driven by curiosity, yearning to see the world that lay beyond. Now, standing in its heart, she felt a pull toward both realms, a tether to the familiar and an ache for the wonder that had unfolded before her. Her gaze fell to her hands, trembling slightly at her sides. "If I return," she asked, her voice quiet but firm, "what will become of the memories I've made here?" Lyricelle tilted her head, her expression enigmatic. "Memories fade, as all things do, but the essence of this place will remain within you, a seed of light, waiting to grow when you most need its guidance. The mortal world will feel heavier upon your return, but you will carry the weight differently." Maeve's chest tightened. She thought of her village, of the fields she had wandered alone under countless moons, longing for something unnamed. She thought of her grandmother's warnings, of the quiet life that would await her if she stepped back into that world. And yet, she also thought of the bridge, the shimmer of its whispers, the tug of its invitation. It had called to her, had chosen her. Could she truly leave it behind? As though sensing her turmoil, the silver-winged pixie flitted closer, its voice a soft melody. The bridge does not punish nor reward. It simply offers a choice. The queen's wings unfolded, their light casting shifting patterns across the walls. "Your choice is yours alone," Lyricelle said, her tone neither cold nor warm. "But know this, Maeve, to remain in Everlight is to embrace the unknown, to surrender what you were for what you might become. To return is to carry the weight of this moment into a world that may never understand it." Maeve closed her eyes, the whispers of the bridge rising faintly in her mind. They spoke not in words, but in feelings, a soft yearning, a quiet understanding. She took a breath, the weight of the queen's gaze pressing upon her, and spoke. "I will return." The words fell from her lips like stones into still water, rippling through the silence. The pixies stilled, their wings dimming momentarily, and Lyricelle inclined her head. "Then the bridge will honor your choice." The crystal in the queen's hands pulsed brightly, its light spilling outward and filling the hall. The whispers of the bridge grew louder, swirling around Maeve as though rejoicing or mourning her decision. It was impossible to tell. The light coalesced into a shimmering arc, cutting through the air and stretching into the distance, its surface gleaming with the faint promise of stars. Maeve stepped toward it, her heart heavy and light all at once. She turned back to Lyricelle, who stood with the crystal now dimmed in her hands. "Thank you," Maeve said, her voice trembling, "for letting me see this." The queen smiled, a faint curve of her lips that held no triumph or sorrow. "You were meant to see it, Maeve. Carry its light well." The bridge shimmered beneath her feet as she stepped onto it, its whispers wrapping around her like a farewell. With each step, the hall of moonlight faded, the pixies' glowing forms dissolving into the mist. The air grew heavier, the light dimmer, until finally she reached the edge. Maeve stepped off the bridge and into the forest of her world. The silver moon still hung high, its light bathing the trees in a pale glow. The whispers fell silent, and when she turned, the bridge was gone. Only the faint scent of wildflowers lingered, a ghost of the realm she had left behind. The village lights glimmered in the distance, warm and familiar. Maeve walked toward them, her steps unsteady but resolute. She felt the weight of her choice settling within her, not as a burden, but as a quiet strength. The world around her seemed the same, yet she felt different, lighter, sharper, as though the light of Everlight still flickered faintly within her. And as the years passed, when the silver moon rose and the night air shimmered, Maeve would find herself gazing into the forest, wondering if the bridge would ever return. For though she had left Everlight, its whispers lingered in her heart, a promise of paths yet to be walked.